introduction of our fantastic panelists for this panel, where we are going to, we're going to blow it up. We've been talking about the local, we've been talking about diversity. We're going to now look at what does that mean on the national policy scale. And we'll start with, to my left is Chris Espinosa. He's the Director of Public Engagement at the House Committee on Natural Resources. And you can see their bios on page 4 and 5. I'm just going to give you a couple of key highlights. He directs the House Committee on Natural Resources Outreach on engagement efforts to a diverse array of stakeholders under the leadership of the committee's chairman, Raul Grijalva from Arizona. Prior to being at the committee, Chris did work at GreenLatinos, a national Latino outreach organization, which we'll talk about in just a moment in more detail. And the other thing I wanted to mention in Chris's introduction is that his committee just had a once-in-a-decade success. They just passed the largest public lands bill we have seen in a very long time. I don't have the figures to hand of how many thousands or millions of acres they managed to protect, but I'm sure Chris can tell us.
2.3 million.
2.3 million acres. And to Chris's left is Mark Magaña, the founding president and CEO of GreenLatinos. GreenLatinos is a national coalition of Latino environmental, natural resource, and conservation leaders. They really focus on networking and through their summit, which you've been talked about, you weren't here, but. And Mark's background in government, before that was in the Clinton administration, in congressional leadership, in the Department of Health and Human Services, and much more. So, and both these gentlemen live here locally in our area. So their heads are in the national, but their feet are right here in the DMV. So let's get started with some questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to bite off a couple of really easy topics here today. I think you'll find them like you won't have any questions. We're going to talk about immigration and the environment, border and the environment, climate change and the Latino community, and what's up next. So I hope you find those really just easy to deal with.
Small issues.
Small
bites.
Yes. So let's start with immigration. Chris, we'll start with you. Because you work so much on Western public lands, which are a huge part of where the border and immigration debate is physically taking place, like the border is on public lands in many places, how do you see public lands protection intersecting with the immigration debate and with the border wall? So let's start there.
Sure. As jurisdiction goes on the various committees of the House, border wall and issues of immigration and national security aren't generally something that folks would associate with our committee. This chairman is very different. Chairman Grijalva made it a priority from the outset, and he has been one of the strongest advocates against the border wall in the Congress. So from our very first hearing as a committee, before we were even organized and had all of our members in place, the chairman decided to hold a hearing specifically on the border wall. For him, this issue is central to his strategy on environmental issues overall, which is to build a coalition, a unity on all of these issues because they do affect each and every community. So as part of that hearing, he made sure that we had representatives that could speak on the impacts to wildlife, the impacts to the environment, but also the impacts to communities and families along the border region. It's something that he's going to continue to aggressively weave into all of the work that we do. And the hope, the ambition is that as environmental organizations across the country, that we will be able to build alliances in a much stronger way than we were able to do before by showing the connectedness of this issue and other issues. For us, that means stretching a little bit. Environmental organizations need to stretch their perspective on what their priorities are. They need to go beyond a box of these are our priorities, and we would love to partner with you, Hispanic Advocacy Organization X, but it's really not our priority. We can't afford that anymore in the administration we have. And this issue is a prime example of how we need to move past that.
Mark, I'm going to ask you if you want to reflect on that as well, but also to take it at a slightly different angle. So we know that immigration and the border wall are very big, important issues in the Latino community. We were just on Capitol Hill a couple of weeks ago with the Choose Clean Water Coalition Lobby Day, and we passed by a big Justice Committee hearing on DACA. And it was just packed, and there were people everywhere, mostly Latino people. So given these very important priorities, how do you see the Latinx community balancing them? How do you see people in the urban, in the rural areas, figuring out how to spend their time, how to advocate on these issues when there are so many pressing ones in addition to the environment?
Early on when we knew that the border wall was going to become an issue, we really did take on how we could bring together different affected communities of the border wall. Environmental orgs, Dreamer DACA, critter animal organizations, landowners. Historically on immigration issues, there's always been a certain amount of kumbaya, but then a certain amount of division when some group wants one thing, another one, and so they find a way to divide your coalitions up, which weakens you. Since we came on and created this border wall coalition that was very diverse, religious groups, etc., we're able to have a dialogue early on that said we're not going to, we're going to try to stick together with groups that normally didn't feel comfortable talking about issues that were different from what they normally talk about. And Chris mentioned this. And so we're able to have conversations in the same room with organizations that are normally concerned about species and organizations that are normally concerned about dreamers. And they can't make a deal with the species groups without them talking to the dreamer groups. Because they can cut deals separately and then split us up and then really create a huge division. The problem with this on a bigger scope isn't just for the border wall. It helps to be together. But it's that if we don't maintain cohesion on issues now, we're not going to be able to build a broad base to be able to tackle issues like climate change when we're able to. We failed at making a federal solution to climate change 10 years ago because we didn't have a significant base. We weren't all coming together. We didn't all have it supported. We didn't have the numbers. If the groups that traditionally want to do climate change don't also get out of their comfort zone and talk about issues like the border wall or child separation or dreamers and support the communities that they live amongst, then how can they expect organizations that don't work on climate change to come and support climate change issues when the intersectionality is vital? And so that's how we're coming together. And it's for an immediate cause, but it's also for a broader earth-saving cause.
You both just said the exact same thing.
We planned that.
So I'm hearing a lot about intersectionality, on environmental organizations stretching. The next place I wanted to take us, though, was to the Latino community and how there's maybe not as much stretching there as sometimes we think. In 2017, the Yale Program on Climate Change Communication conducted a big nationally representative survey of climate change in the Latino mind, and they found that, I'm going to read a quote, Latinos are much more engaged with the issue of global warming than are non-Latinos. Latinos are more convinced global warming is happening and human-caused, more worried about it, perceive greater risks, are more supportive of climate change policies, and are more willing to get involved politically. Within the Latino community, we find another consistent pattern. While Latinos generally are more engaged with the issue of global warming than are non-Latinos, Spanish language Latinos are even more engaged than English language Latinos. So that's really cool. And we often hear in mainstream environmental organizations that it's too hard to get, not too hard, it's very hard to get people of color to join and to focus on these priorities, but it sounds like from this study and from other studies we've seen that these are already priorities in the Latino community. So how can we make this as actionable as possible? What does the Latino community need to do or need? What does the environmental community need to do or need to act on what's already there?
We did polling just before the last presidential election, and a poll 2 years before that. And things that we distinctly found, and others have found that have done polling, is that Latino community polls 5 to 10 to 15% higher on questions of whether we are feel that we are stewards of the environment and something we should prioritize. And in all the questions you see, 5 to 15% higher than the general population. One thing in our poll that stood out for me was a question about why they care. And this kind of corresponds to what you asked. The number one reason for people that said why they cared, I thought would be asthma, air pollution, clean water issues. It was because of the effects of climate change in their countries of origin. That is what answers the Spanish language. That they have a closer link to what's happening in their country of origin. And it's personal, and it comes home. When something happens to your family in your country of origin, you have to, first of all, do I give more remittances so that we can rebuild the well? Or further, do I help them out so they can move to the city? Then when they move to the city and there's no opportunities because they can't grow anything out in there where they live, then they're in crime infestation and there's no opportunities and jobs. So it's now, how can I help them immigrate? And so it all weighs very heavily the effects of climate change on individuals, especially first generation individuals, the Spanish speaking individuals, the immediate effects of climate change on their families. And so that answers the Spanish, and it was a surprise to me, but it's a worthy consideration. And the second part of that is, how can we get them, for me and this is the part that Chris loves, Latinos to me are, same poll, first 2 questions in a row. Question 1 was, do you consider yourself to be a steward of the environment? 70%, mid-70s, really high. Very next question, do you consider yourself, and this was Latino voters nationwide, do you consider yourself to be an environmentalist? Mid-teens. So the question isn't, are you not an environmentalist by name because you don't belong to Sierra Club or some other organization, or because you don't pay money to this or do that. It's, we are environmentalists or conservationists because it's part of our culture. We don't think of it, it's an assumed position, it's not a policy position. The fact that I reuse my Ziploc bags is not a policy thing, it's just a habit. The fact that we wash out a piece of aluminum foil, flatten it out and put it away, or reuse our plasticware after events, or 100 things that we do, eat every part of the animal, stems from our culture. And so when you talk to people about the environment, if you come to Latinos from a standard, do you believe we should reduce SOx and NOx and do carbon sequestration? You lose them, because that's not where they come from emotionally. That's not their orientation towards the environment. The orientation is, let's not waste, let's reuse, let's have common sense, put on a sweater, don't use the air conditioning. It's common sense things that come down from above. And Chris loves this the most. We learn our environmentalism from the back of a chancla.
He told me I'm supposed to cut him off when he says that.
Yes. No more drinking after that.
So I think it's Chris's turn.
That's much more to say.
Let's go beyond the chancla. Everything Mark said was right on. And I think there are some things that we can do to sort of change that paradigm as organizations, as elected leaders, as community advocates. Part of that, and you asked, what is the need? Where is the disconnect? I think part of the need is greater engagement. And it's got to be the right culturally competent kind of engagement. If, as organizations, our approach is simply to take our existing campaign plans on any given issue, take our existing literature and materials, translate it into Spanish, and think that we're done, you are just pouring good money over bad. You're not going to get anywhere. This is a long-term challenge, and it requires intensive engagement with a community that is already primed for it. The way you do it is you bring on the right staff who have that cultural competency, not just the language skills, but the cultural understanding. You help them participate in the campaign design from start to finish, and you include the communities that you're trying to reach and engage in that process. That is one of the single most important things that, as organizations, as government entities, as whatever entity we're coming from this challenge through, that we can do to change that paradigm.
Thank you. You guys came in the afternoon, so you missed that we've already had 2 panels today that just said exactly the same thing from the local perspective.
Good.
So I say that's great. So,
Even the chancla piece?
No, not the chancla piece. That was, you brought that. The piece about cultural competency in organizations. And not just translating into Spanish, and greater and deeper engagement. We had a great slide that Felipe Benitez showed of, you've got your mainstream vision, sort of white-driven vision of hiking by yourself in one of the new 2.3 million acres of wilderness versus a giant family having a picnic next to a picnic table, next to their car with the music and the soccer game and everything going on. So we had a couple questions come in, and I want to bring one of them up before we turn to the climate change topic, and it's about environmental justice. Environmental justice has come up, I would say, in a more embedded way today than really explicitly. I want to talk, the question is about the sort of classic environmental justice issues of disposal of toxic waste, incinerators, disposal of other kinds of toxic, basically unequal distribution of environmental harms. So when we talk about engagement, when we talk about cultural competency, are we always talking about environmental justice? Are we, how do you grow the advocacy for environmental justice so that it comes authentically from within communities when so many mainstream organizations are already also trying to prioritize it? Does that make sense?
It does. Boy, we could spend 4 hours talking about that, and you could ask 10 different people that same question and get 15 different answers. Part of the challenge with environmental justice is defining the term and having a shared understanding of what that means. For some people, environmental justice is shorthand for environmental issues that impact communities of color. Yes, that is a part of it. But that in and of itself does not define environmental justice. Again, there needs to be some consensus and some deeper conversation, particularly with the communities most impacted by environmental justice issues. There's a concept in environmental justice communities, which is let the communities speak for themselves. And that is central to working in the field of environmental justice. To me, environmental justice is getting to a place where we all share the benefits and the burdens of our environmental policy equitably. Chairman Grijalva has made environmental justice a deep commitment of his. He's convened a working group of coalitions and leaders in the field of environmental justice. He's made sure that at every hearing, we have the communities that are most impacted by the issues that we're addressing represented as witnesses. So that's a good starting point. Addressing environmental justice through policy requires a lot of different components. It requires looking at civil rights offices and how enforcement occurs, looking at issues of cumulative impact and which communities get burdened with permit approvals over others that don't. I would love to talk all day about EJ because it's also something that I am strongly passionate about. I think that it is an issue area that every single organization that calls themselves an environmental organization should engage in. And that doesn't mean that they have to lead that work, but they do have to support it with resources, with personnel, with investment in conversation in those communities, with the understanding that they may not get to the place that they want to get, but having the conversation is just, the process is just as important as the end product.
There's an old African proverb that everyone has heard that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. In the Latino community, we know that we do things in community. We know that it emboldens us, it strengthens us, it makes us work harder when we have comadres together, when we have family together, when we have others that are fighting the good fight with us. It's very difficult for any one community, EJ, to have all the access, the power, the resources to be able to solve all the problems from their community. One thing that GreenLatinos tries to do is says we all, from the different sectors of the environmental movement, we all have different powers. We all have different resources. We all have different access. And individually, any one sector of the environmental movement can't solve these problems alone. And we've tried. For so long, we've tried just to do this alone. But we can't. We have to work together as individuals in the different sectors of the movement to be able to share our resources. One movement has local power, local access, community support, names, numbers. Another sector has money and governmental power and comms power. And if left alone, they might not be able to win victories, but when they come together equitably and transparently, they can win victories. And so the importance is not just to say this is an EJ issue and it's just for EJ to handle. That means no one else can come in and work with them. But it is an issue that happens in a community that EJ locals are going to lead. But if we don't have those resources, the power, the access to go along with the local trust and the local community building that's been going on forever in that community, then we can't get those victories as fast and we can't get them to be sustaining as we can working together. And so fortunately, the Latino community knows this. We are going to be the ones that will break down the historical barriers between the different sectors of the environmental movement and find us the bigger solutions to climate change and other things when the mainstream movement refuses to change, to be able to break down the barriers themselves.
Wow. Well, as conference co-chair, my co-chair and I decided to let this panel run a little long, just so you all know. Timekeepers, thank you.
In addition,
Because we have had questions come in on climate change, and we knew it was going, that was one of the issues we knew we wanted to cover, and you just segued it to us really great, Mark. So, I told you that there would be questions about the Green New Deal. We have a question about the Green New Deal. But it's sort of a bigger picture question. What's next? I have a daughter, she's 19 months old. You guys have children too, right?
Yep.
So I always care deeply about climate change, and I'm not an immigrant, but I almost sometimes feel like one because I have the same sense of loss of my home country, Miami, from the rising seas.
South America.
Yeah, that you described that immigrants feel. It's obviously in a different way, but it is the solastalgia, the feeling that you're losing a way of life, nostalgia before it's even happened, the loss. So I feel that very strongly, and then having a kid has certainly made me even more terrified than I already was about what's it going to look like. Yassine, what is it you said, Yassine? Can you rephrase what you said in your last?
If we don't do something about it now, we won't have a future.
Yeah, basically. If we don't do something about it now, Yassine on our youth panel was saying, we won't have a future from the perspective of young people. So my question was what's next, but really the question is what's next to deal with climate change. And it's for both of you. I know you come from very different perspectives on terms of what your next steps are that you have influence on right now. So talk to us about that. What's next for climate change? How will GreenLatinos and the grassroots organizing that you're doing in the Latino community push us there? Is the Green New Deal part of that? How? And the same question from the Natural Resources Committee. What's next?
So GreenLatinos is a network. We, as myself, as the president of the organization, I'm not EJ, I'm not Big Green, I'm not any one of the sectors, but we work with our members who are in all the different sectors. That being said, the fight to save the planet in the next 12 years is not a legislative battle. It is a social and economic, cultural change in the way we live, the way our economy works, the way we consume, the way we work with each other, our respect for nature. It cannot be run like a legislative campaign. It has to be run like a societal change, like the end of slavery, like civil rights movement. If we don't have, and sociologists have said different numbers, between 5% of the population and 15% of the population on the ground, on their feet, letting their members of Congress, their mayors, their state electeds, any leaders that can hear, letting them know by getting off their couches and getting on the streets in the millions and taking the risks and being uncomfortable for this period of time. That is what it's going to take. This is not a letter writing campaign. This is not an OMB meeting campaign. This is not a I'm going to do and we still do all these things, so I'm not criticizing them. We do petitions, we write the letters, we do the regulations, we do everything you have to do. But this has to go deeper than this to have the significant amount of change that we're going to need in the next 12 years. And the youth are leading the way. It's not all on their shoulders. Whenever I say the youth are leading the way, they always say, "Can you help us? Why is this on us?" You're going to take the biggest hit, and it's horrible. And I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and it got me when I first had my 6-year-old child. This was a hobby until then, and now it's a way of life. It changes, because I know that we're affected right now, but what's going to happen? Right now we have a choice. We can change our lifestyle. We can sacrifice some time at home in front of the TV, on the computer, and get out on the streets. We can take some risks, like we saw in these documentaries that they took in the civil rights era. We can do all these things right now. While we have a choice to do them, we can sacrifice and suffer a bit together. Before we don't have a choice about sacrificing and suffering. And that's happening soon. So it's not a legislative battle. That's a subset. This is a movement battle. And it's going to take people power en masse.
Well, as a committee staffer, I'm not sure I would characterize it as not a legislative battle. We are at a critical moment here. And what we need to do, the best line that I can steal from Magaña, who I'm sure stole it from me at some point, is we need to take risks. As organizations, as individuals, we can't wait for the plan. We can't wait for the campaign. We need to get out in the streets. We need to yell and scream at the top of our lungs, coalesce with whoever we need to coalesce with, throw money at things that we have not tried before and are not sure are going to work, because it's now or never. The question was kind of oriented towards the Green New Deal. So I will say that the chairman endorsed the Green New Deal resolution. I may be wrong on this, but I don't think that I am. I believe that we have more members of our committee on the Select Committee on Climate Change than any other committee. It is a huge priority for Chairman Grijalva, and he supported it because he believes that it creates the space for exactly what Mark is talking about, for a reimagining of all of the areas that impact our lives, the economy, our tax system, our energy infrastructure, our transportation infrastructure. If we're going to tackle this challenge, it has to be a whole of government approach. Now, 25% of emissions come from federal lands, so natural resources has a piece of that conversation. I would argue a very significant piece. We can convert that from being part of the problem to part of the solution. It's going to take political will to do that, and that comes from the people. There's no way to get there without tremendous pressure, without tremendous investments, without tremendous vision. And I think that's been one of the greatest assets that youth bring to this conversation beyond just their energy is their fearlessness with approaching that. Just about every legislative battle that is undertaken, you get to a point where someone says, okay, well, how are you going to pay for it? Okay, that sounds great. Where are you going to get the infrastructure? Where are you going to get the will? There's a lot of reasons why you can't do something. What we need is the courage to push past that. So we'll see what the select committee produces. They are just now in the process of having their organizing meeting and selecting their leadership and coming up with their oversight plan and mapping out exactly what role they're going to play. The chairman isn't waiting for that. The entire month of February on the House Committee on Natural Resources was dedicated to climate change. We looked at the impact of climate change on our national parks, on our oceans, on our economy, on impacted communities. We looked at sea level rise. We looked at impacts to endangered species. Best I can tell, I don't see the chairman slowing down on that one bit. So what we really need is the pressure to support that work to get us past a point where legislators lack the imagination and the will.
I want to say one last thing.
Okay.
To put into perspective the moment we're in now, I like to say that we're in a documentary moment. I love watching documentaries, and when you watch documentaries about the battle for civil rights, or the battle things and slavery, or the women's right to vote, or others, and you see people, you wonder, what would I, if I'd been alive then, would I have been on the bus? Would I have been on that bridge? Would I have been in front of that dog? Would I have taken that hose? Would I have been at that counter? What would I have done? Would I have been there at that time, at that moment? We're in a point right now where we don't have to wonder if we'd be in that documentary. You don't have to wonder what you would have done, because right now is a demanding time where you can be that person, so that when your grandchildren say either one of two things: shit's so fucked up, what did you do? What didn't you do? Were you there? Or, I read about how you saved us. Thank you for what you did. What side do we want to be on? This is a documentary moment. Take advantage of it. It's a moment, we don't always get this. And so it's a positive thing where community's going to come together, and we're all going to be the heroes. It's going to be beautiful.
I will say, though, in a room full of advocates, let yourselves breathe a little, too. It's okay. We're going to get there. We're going to get there together.
Well, with that, we're out of time. We're gonna get there together, and I wanna thank you guys so much for coming together and joining us for this panel.